The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Leela Rhodes and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning on a Saturday morning. We are your market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar, Microsoft Azure Administrator Masterclass. And presenting today's topic is Vishal Nigam. Vishal is an experienced AI, ML, DevOps, and cloud infrastructure expert with over 10 years of experience in GCP, AWS, and Microsoft Azure with DevOps, including Kubernetes, Docker, big data, etc. Vishal is an experienced corporate trainer, having over 10 years of experience in various technologies. He has delivered more than 3,000 corporate training batches on different technology. He has built various products on blockchain and has trained more than 5,000 participants globally. He is also a global speaker. And please bear in mind that this is just an overview of a very robust topic. But we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. So if you're interested in a further discussion about any of those, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to that recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build an innovative learning organization by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach excuse me, to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize, and they encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the cloud practice area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for cloud courses, and our upcoming classes include various trainings on Microsoft Azure Administrator, Microsoft Azure Security Technologies, Microsoft Azure Architecture Technology Expert, and many more. Private training to teams is also available, and those learning plans can be customized to the specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of cloud marketing assets, such as the free 1-hour training, free on-demand training, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handouts. And these offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website at www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will explain the general Microsoft Azure Administrator concepts, identity, governance, and compliance, Azure Admin, Intersite Connectivity, and much more. Now, to start with, I'll just give you a quick overview of the logistics before we start today. You will have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. You can simply hit the escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your webinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. So if you come up with any questions, feel free to submit them for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address them at the end of the session today. Also, to get the best out of today's webinar, we've included the slides, courses we've talked about, and the marketing assets in the handout section of the GoToWebinar viewer. And you can refer to those at any time today to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Vishal to get started. Oh, here we go. You should be able to share your screen now. And Vishal, I forgot to ask you about doing any breaks because we do have a longer session today. So if you know when you're going to have those in there, just let me know and you can put those in the chat.
Great. So, okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Leela, for giving me the opportunity. Now, for quickly answering your question to the breaks, we're going to have a break, let's say we're going to cover a couple of modules, and I will give a couple of demonstrations. So after every module, we'll kind of take a break of 15 minutes, okay? That's how we're going to do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me bring my screen, and I hope my screen should be visible.
Yep, looks great.
All righty, great, fantastic. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this AZ 104 Microsoft Administrator Certification Masterclass. Now, as you said, this class is going to be giving you a very brief on what this certification is all about and why you should be really going towards that. I'm Vishal Nigam, and I will be your instructor for these few hours to give you an insight what this class is about. Now, before I do this, let's quickly see what this is all about. Let's go and look at AZ104. Not this, but 104 here. And if you look at this, this is our certification we're talking about. Now, this was, it's a certification that is kind of geared towards those who want to implement or manage or monitor the identity, the storage, the compute, the virtual network in a cloud environment. So this the core objective of the course is to help you to provision and to kind of size and monitor and probably adjust your resources there. And if you're involved in, let's say doing and building cloud-based solution and services, and you've got some involvement in cloud-based solution service, I think this is a certification you probably want to go for. And it's a highly demanding certification in the market right now. And there are no prerequisites for doing this. I mean, you just gotta have some basic computer networking concept that you can kind of learn along the way. And the whole objective of the course is more of like a a role-based certification. So in order for when you will be doing this journey, it's a full-fledged 4-day offering. So if you go in here and if you look at probably as an administrator course there, so you'll find that this is a 4-day course. So if you can look at there, this is like a 4-day course that can happen there. So in the 4-day of journey, this is going to be a great concept to be covering here. But for now, we're going to give you a very brief of things like what is Azure identities, how do we look for virtual networking, and things like storage on Azure. And based on all those things, you will be able to understand that. So the exam is way more focused on a lot of other aspects, and this is something which is extremely important for you to get started. So this is going to be our focus for on this aspect and how we get started and kind of get done with this. So let's try and understand eventually what this course is all about and how do we really get started. And throughout the course, throughout this webinar, I will be giving you some demonstration about some practices, some processes. So the first thing we're going to talk about is administering the identity. Now, the first thing, this is why we're even talking about this at the very first. So you have to understand that if I want to transition a workload to the cloud, it involves more than just, moving these servers or the websites or the data. And companies, they need to probably think about how they want to secure those resources and identify those authorized users. So let's say if your company wants to implement some Azure Active Directory, or there are a lot of features like Azure Active Directory Join or self-service password reset, then you got to be having an understanding on the Azure Active Directory and implement those features there. So in this segment for the course, the first thing we understand is how do we manage identity? What is the whole reason behind the whole identity aspect when it comes to Azure as a process? So if you look at this, everything is going to happen and revolve around Active Directory or Azure Active Directory to be precise. Now let's talk about that. Now, Azure Active Directory is a Microsoft multi-tenant cloud-based directory, and it's an identity management service. So if we look at this as an offering, so if I go here and if I search for Azure Active Directory, you will see that this is a service that is going to kind of do pretty much everything that happens on Azure. And it's, as I said, it's the Azure's offering of the cloud version of the Active Directory. And basically with Azure Active Directory, we can do a lot of things. We can have a single sign-on to pretty much any cloud or on-the-prem web app, because this Azure Active Directory is a service that kind of provides a secure single sign-on to cloud and on-the-prem application. And when we talk about the SSOs, we're talking about Microsoft 365 or thousands of SaaS applications. Like if you ever work with Salesforce or DocuSign or ServiceNow, we can use Azure Active Directory kind of sign in there. We can also work with iOS or Mac OS or probably Android. I mean, if you're a user, you can actually launch your application from a personalized web-based access panel or mobile app or on Microsoft Drive, and the experience is going to be pretty much the same, whether you're on the iOS or Mac OS or Android. And very good feature about the Azure Active Directory is that you can protect your on-the-prem web application with a secure remote access. That means if I want to, let's say, access my on-prem application in some scenario, and I can access them from everywhere and even protect them with a multi-factor authentication, or I can have those conditional access policies or group-based management access. As a user, you can access SaaS or on-prem web apps with the help of Active Directory, and I can connect my Active Directory and their on-prem application directories to Azure Active Directory in just a few steps. So it's a great way where I can give a consistent set of users or group or password to environments there. I can enhance, my application aspect. If you can click on product overview, you will see there that it gives you a lot of features there. So I can, as I said, enhance application access security with a lot of these unique identity protection capabilities, which is about having a consolidated view into, if let's say there's a suspicious sign activated, how to remove that. So I can actually find and look at those options there. So this is something which is a very, very important. It kind of happens to exist there. Now, when we look at the Azure Active Directory, there are some terms that you got to remember, you got to know eventually. So it's important that you understand this. So the first of the term that you have is an identity. Now, what's an identity? An object that can authenticate it. An identity could be a user, could be you or me with a username and a password. That's going to be an identity. And these identities could be also an application, could be a server that might require authentication through some certificates or secret. That's an identity. You have an account there, which again is an identity, which has a data associated with that. So you can't have an account if I don't have an identity. So your identity kind of defines an account, and all that data that you will be doing a job in there will be stored with that identity. You have an Azure AD account, which means Azure Active Directory account, which is created through the Azure Active Directory or some other cloud services like Microsoft 365, for example, and your identities are stored in Azure Active Directory. They're accessible to your organization's cloud service subscription. And normally, if you ever go and log into your Microsoft account, it asks you, hey, is it a work account or school account? That's what it means. So Azure AD account defines whether it's a work account, school account, eventually do that. Then in the case, you also have the tenant or directory. Now, Azure tenant is a trusted or a dedicated instance of an Azure Active Directory that is meant for you. It's automatically created every time when your organization, let's say if I have an organization, I go ahead and sign up for an Azure Active Directory, there will be a tenant that will be created for me. And in that tenant, I will get my subscription there, and I can have more instances in that Active Directory. And I remember Azure Active Directory is the product which Azure offers you for identity. That means Azure is not just going to be restricted to the Azure Active Directory. It's going to be more than that there. So obviously, when we look at Azure, there are two options. You have an ADDS, which is the Active Directory Domain Services, and you have an Azure Active Directory. So you might be thinking that, okay, we always have an ADDS as an option. What's the new that Azure Active Directory will give to us? Now, ADDS is the traditional deployment of your Windows server-based Active Directory that you will deploy on a physical or a virtual server. And ADDS is commonly considered, I would say, to be primarily a directory service. So it's only one component of the Windows Active Directory suite of technologies, which also includes Active Directory certificates, and you have the lightweight directory services, and you've got federation services, which is ADFS, and you have got RMS, which is Rightman. So you've got so many services there. But you can deploy and manage an ADDS in Azure Virtual Machine. But it is, if you're doing that, then obviously it's recommended to use an Azure Active Directory as a managed service, unless you are targeting an IaaS workload. That kind of depends on ADDS specifically. So it's a different scenario. It's an offering there. Now, I would say Azure Active Directory has a lot of similarities to what ADDS does for you, but there are also a lot of differences. And it's important for you to realize that using an Azure Active Directory is different from actually deploying an Active Directory domain controller on the Azure virtual machine, and then you want to add it to your on-prem domain. And that's something which you can really avoid there, because we can use the Azure Active Directory, the cloud-hosted directory, to make a primary identity solution. And it is designed for all these internet-based applications like HTTP and HTTPS communication there. And because Azure Active Directory is web-based or HTTP or HTTPS-based, it can say that we cannot query through an LDAP. Instead of Azure Active Directory uses the REST APIs over the HTTP versus HTTPS. And because it is HTTP and HTTPS enable, it does not even use Kerberos authentication. It actually leverages HTTP and HTTPS protocols like the SAMLs or the Windows Federation, OpenID Connect, or which is OAuth as an example there. And Azure Active Directory also includes a lot of federation services. There are a lot of third-party services, like, for example, you can leverage Facebook or Google to kind of sign in there. And the best part, it has a flat structure. Now, what do you mean by flat structure? All the users and the groups that are created, they're in a flat structure. That means there's no organizational unit or a group policy object. Now, remember, Azure Active Directory is a managed service. That means your job is to just manage the users, the groups, the policies. So deploying an ADDS with a virtual machine using Azure means that you are kind of responsible for the other part of the kitty, which Azure has done for you. So why to really waste time in deployment and management and configuration, the working, all these things, when Azure is kind of doing this job for me? So when you go to Azure Activity, there are different versions that are available there. So it can basically comes in 4 editions. So on the extreme left, you've got the free, then you've got the Microsoft 365 apps, there's Premium 1, and there's Premium 2, P1 and P2. Now, the free edition is included with all the Azure subscription that you will buy there. The Premium edition, they are available through a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, and there is an open volume license program, and there are these cloud solution providers. And Azure and Microsoft 365 subscriber, they can actually buy a premium one and premium subscription there. And you can have different features. So if you look at for the free, we can have about 500,000 objects. That means identities there. For others, it's unlimited. Single sign-on, it's unlimited there. For core ID access, we get them with all of them. For B2B collaboration, we get all of them. But if you go to manage your 365 apps, you can't do it with the free subscription. You don't have any premium features or hybrid entities or advanced group access or conditional access with this. You don't have it. So remember, your free one is the user, which is going to give you a basic user and group management. You will also be able to get the on-prem directory synchronization. You'll get basic reports. You can do a single sign-on across all the Azure 365 apps there. So that's with the free part. The 365 app version or the edition is included with the Office 365. So if you bought the Office 365, so in addition to the free version, this edition will provide identity and access management for Microsoft 365 app. Like you can brand your MFA, you can do your group access management, you have a self-service password reset for your closet. You have a lot of features there. The P1, which is the premium one, that means you get the free features, obviously, but you also allow you to manage your hybrid user. That means I can manage my both on the prem and the cloud resource. And it supports these advanced administrations, like I have got dynamic groups, I've got self-service group management, there is identity manager, there's cloud write-back capabilities, which kind of allow all these self-service password reset for your on-prem user. And if you go to the P2, so addition from the for free and the P1 features, P2, as you can see, kind of gives you 2 more things. It gives you Azure Active Directory identity protection, so you kind of safeguard yourself to provide a risk-based conditional access to your application and any kind of critical company data. And you also have a privileged identity management, which is also included to help you discover, or I would say restrict and monitor your administrators and their access to resources. And that gives you just-in-time access when needed there. So if you, I mean, the pricing kind of depends obviously based on the different portals. So if I quickly show you pricing, so you can see the pricing will be different based on this part. So if you go in here pricing, and you will observe that these pricing will go on this. So if you look at the premium, the P2, the freeze, you have a pricing per about on a user basis. You've got per $2 browser. So that's again a mechanism you want to be careful about. So once you do this, you can actually get started. And once you have an Azure Active Directory, you want to be able to integrate with your application. And for that, we have something called as Azure AD Join. Now, Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, it allows the single sign-on onto devices and application and services from anywhere. And as an IT administrator, you got to ensure corporate assets are protected. You want to make sure that devices are kind of meeting the security standards and compliant. So Azure Active Directory it's the job of Azure Active Directory is to provide access to all these organizational apps and resources, so you are able to simplify your Windows deployment of work on devices there. So what do you get? You get SSO, single sign-on, to your Azure managed SaaS application services, and your users won't have additional authentication prompts when they're accessing work resources. So the SSO functionality is kind of available even when users are not connected to the domain work. And you have enterprise compliant roaming there, and that means your user, all these settings can be managed across them, and your user, they don't need to connect a Microsoft account to observe anything about the file. You can also access to Microsoft Store for Business using an Azure Active account. Your users can actually go ahead, they can choose from an inventory of applications which is pre-selected by the organization. You have Windows Hello support for a secure and a convenient access to your work resources. You can define a restriction of access to apps from only devices that then meets your compliance policy. So, and then that's something there. And you have a seamless access to on-prem resource. That means when the device has a line of sight to on-prem domain control, you can actually define this process. So you can connect in multiple ways there. Let's say if I want to get a device under the control of Azure Active Directory, I can first register a device to Azure Active Directory, which enables me to manage a device identity. And that Azure Active device registration would provide the device with an identity, which is then used to authenticate the device when a user kind of signs into Azure AD. So you can use the identity to enable or disable a device. And I can join a device. Again, that is more of like an extension of registering a device. So joining kind of provides the benefits of registering and changes the local state device. So if I want to change the local state, which allows my users to sign in to create a device using an organizational work or school account instead of a personal account. So your registration combined with, if I combine that with some kind of an MDM, which is a mobile device management solution like Microsoft Intune, then I can get a lot of additional attributes in Azure Active Directory. So you can see there are so many services that can happen there, but Azure Active Directory kind of already join is intended for organizations that do not have an on-prem Windows Server Active Directory infrastructure. It can be used for different sort of like a branch office kind of stuff. That's one thing there. And what do you want to do here? One of the good features you can have here, you can implement a self-service password control. Now, what does mean there? That a lot of help desk calls are requested. Hey, you know what? I've forgotten my password. Please reset that. So you can enable that self-service password reset control, which gives the user the ability to kind of bypass the help desk and reset their own password. And you can configure the whole feature, and all you have to do is determine who will be able to use that self-service password reset from your existing AD tenant on Azure portal under the Azure Active Directory password reset. And when I'm getting demo, I'm going to show you that part of there. And if you look at this selected option on the left, is useful for creating a specific group who have a self-service password reset enabled. And you can create a group for maybe testing or POC, which is proof of concept, before you deploy a larger group there. And once you're ready to deploy this functionality to all the users with your accounts in your tenant, I think you can change the settings to all of them, and you can say, okay, everyone needs to be there, and they can access that. So that's something we did. And once you're able to enable the password reset for your users and group, you can pick the number of authentication methods on the right side, if you see of the screen, which is required to reset a password. And the number of authentication methods available to your users out there on the screen. You've got to have at least one authentication method that is required to reset a password, but it's a good idea to have at least one more method label. So you can choose probably, let's say, get an email notification or a text or a code probably sent to a user's mobile or office phone, or maybe can have some security question. You can require a security questions to be registered for the users in your tenant. And you can configure how many correctly answered questions are required for a successful password. All these basic config there. So these security questions can be less secure than the other methods, but you're going to have them. So that's something which is extremely important to kind of know that. So remember, as an administrator, you got to be familiar with Azure Active Directory and its features. You got to understand it there, and you got to define the main Active Directory components like identity, the account, the tenant. You should be aware about what's the comparison between Azure Active Directory and Azure Active Directory domain services, and what are some of the how do you identify the features of Azure Active Directory additions and the usage there. So it's very, very important for you to do that. And if you look at the documentation, I think that will really help you to achieve that. But let's say we've got Active Directory all set up. Cool. What's next for you? The next thing is to manage my users or group an account. I mean, I've got things running. It's time for me to really go ahead and manage these users and account and kind of get started. So what do we want to do here? We want to actually first understand how do we create a user account. Now, obviously, think about a scenario. Every user who needs access to Azure resources needs an Azure user account. And a user account contains basically all the information that is needed to authenticate the user during the sign-in process. And we can have these group accounts, which can, again, let me organize my user account. So the administration is easier to do that. And you need to really create and manage users and group accounts eventually. And to view your AD resources, you can access the all user page on this. And let me show you that meanwhile, how that looks like. So if you go to portal.azure.com, and I'm going to log in with my credentials, or maybe, so if you go to Azure Active Directory, and you will see I have users on the side of it, right? And here I can see all the users. So typically, when you have users, you have different kind of identities there. Let it load. Huh, that's weird. Let me try do something else. Maybe use a different machine. Portal.azure.com. Let's where's my signing on? I have to sign up. I have to sign in. Yep, that's right. Let me put in the email address. And I'm going to put the password. Okay, that makes sense. That's weird. So I'm logging now. Okay, that's fine. So you can see I'm logged in, and if I go to Azure Active Directory, I can search it there. I should be able to see some users there. And there you can see. So I see, again, I've got a lot of users in this capacity, and typically Azure AD define users in three ways. You can have a cloud identity, that means the user who are only going to exist in Azure Active Directory. Like it is an administrator account or a user that you're managing yourself. And these cloud identities, they can be in Azure Active Directory or an external Azure Active Directory. So the user is defined in the AD instance, that's fine there. And when these accounts are removed from the primary directory, they are deleted. So you can have a cloud identity as a user. I can have a directory synchronized identity also as an option, which could be good, which could be again an option there. So if I go back here, so I can have a directory synchronized option there, IDs as an option there, which could be kind of an option there. And then you have this guest user. So if you look at my portal here, we can see there are some user types which are called as a guest, and these usually exist outside the Azure. So an example of would be an account from some other cloud provider or a Microsoft account, like I have an Xbox Live account, and their source is an invited user. So this type of account is useful when some external vendors or a contractor needs access to my resources, and once their help is no longer necessary, I can go ahead and remove the account and all of their access. So that's also a very important feature to kind of address that. Then how to manage account. And there are multiple ways that we can actually add cloud identity to Azure AD. So one is that you can actually add people from the portal right away. So this is the portal, right? You can add a user to the portal, and you can give a name there. So I can define set of new users. And if I go to this other section here, you can see I can add a user from here, and so whenever you are adding a user, you have to give it the name, you have to give in their profile, like what's the department, and then you have to consider what kind of user is this. Is it going to be a global administrator? Is it going to be something else as a user? So you have to define the user roles there, and these are the set of roles that you are having. So you have to define what is the type of role I want to give the user there. What's the profile there, and then you also have to um, give certain option there that if I want to restore a user that deleted there, and then again I can have a lot of other options there. So I can create a bulk user also. So if I have a set of bulk user, I can actually go and create a bulk operation there, and I can get bulk create actually at the same time. So I can have them directly there. So whenever you are doing this, remember a couple of things, which is I believe is extremely important when you want to create users. You got to have a right naming convention, which is that you want to establish or implement a naming convention for a username, like the display names and aliases. So your username could consist of like your first name or last name, like for example, Vishal.Nigam, for example, at whatever.com. And that does to be a password mechanism. So you want to implement a convention for the initial password of those newly created user. You want to figure out a way for the new users to receive their password in a secure way, and there are methods which kind of used or they used to even generate random password, which is all good there. So you can actually get those things done there. And I can actually, so once you have this thing done, you can actually, as I said, create a bulk account, and you can even have these group accounts created. Now, what are group accounts? Let's try and understand that. Now, in Azure, if you look at this, and if I go back to this page here, you can see we have an option of go to directory. We have option for group on the left side. Now, in the group, it defines you Azure and allows you to have only two kinds of group. As you can see, there is a security type of group, right? And there is a Microsoft 365. There's a two kind of group there. The security groups are used to manage the member and computer access to a shared resource for a group of users. For example, I can create a security group for a specific security policy, and by doing it this way, I can give a set of permissions to all of the members at once instead of having to add permissions to each member individually. And that's where you need, if I want to do this action, then I gotta be the Azure AD administrator there. There's also this Microsoft 365 group. Now, what is that group actually? In this, it kind of gives you collaboration opportunities by giving the members an access to a shared mailbox of the file. And you can give people outside of the organization access a group, and both your users and admin can actually have this group. So that can be possible there. And once you have a group, you can actually, let's say this is Newton Vishal, I can create a group there and I can actually add a member to that group. So eventually it's also possible. You can look in the group and you can start adding the members. So there are different ways you can do add a member. You can have an assigned member that is specifically I want to assign to this group. That's one way. I can have a dynamic member. That means, let's say, I want to automatically add or remove members. So whenever a member's attribute change, Azure should review the dynamic group rules for the directory. And the members meet the requirements, they are added there. And if a member no longer meets the rules, they are just removed there. That's one thing. And then there's also a dynamic device. So it can use a dynamic group rules to automatically add or remove the devices. So if a device attribute changes, Azure will review those dynamic rules and kind of gets it out. Well, this again will be a very interesting as a feature for you to kind of move forward there. And we can also have these administrative units, which is a great part. So it could be useful, I would say, to create those, to restrict administrative scope by using an administrative unit there, and all that are made up of independent divisions of any kind. So think about an example. Let's say there's a large university that's made up of a lot of autonomous schools, like the School of Business, the School of Engineering, and all of them, right? And each school then has a team of ID admins who kind of control the access. They can manage users, set policies for the school. So as a central administrator, you could create a role with administrative permissions over only Azure AD's users in your business school AD unit, right? You can create an administrative unit for probably one of the schools there. You can populate the administrative unit with only the business school students, stop there. So you can have a control there. And basically, you can manage this whole aspect or whole permission with this process, which is eventually a great aspect to get your job done. So this is something very interesting, and this is something I would say as a great way. So what I want to do here, I want to quickly give you some demonstration there because that's the part that I wanted to talk on this one. So that's like in a presentation, but we're gonna play around with the port. We're gonna do something on our side of it. So as you can see, this is where I am in the machine, right? And we're able to log in. And let's go to Azure Active Directory here. And we're gonna basically, if you see this is our overview page, this is where everything kind of happens. And what I want to do is I want to create a tenant. Now, if I go in here, okay, why don't I have the tenant option there? Okay, let's see. This looks a bit better. Okay, so if we go ahead, I'm going to add a tenant to show you how do we even add a tenant. So you can see right now we have a tenant called Cloud Site, which is one of them already for us. But if you go to plus here, that's weird. But it managed from here. So we're going to create a tenant for us. And you see, we have an option to select a tenant type. What is tenant type I have here? So on this, I'm going to choose Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to go to configuration. And let's give it a name, probably called as my first AAD. And let's say give a domain name, probably maybe some random number, which is okay. And this is going to be done. So this step will take some time for us. And let's review and create. So we're adding a tenant, and I just explained what a tenant is. So we're going to click on create. Now this is going to take some time. So let's do the authentication. And let's wait for a few minutes. Now, as you can see right now in the cloud slice tenant here, but we're going to be using and working on our tenant. And we're going to see how that really operates. And this is a very important concept, even in exam perspective. What is an Azure tenant? And this is something you've got to be really aware about that as a process. And this is happening. Let me also show you. In Azure also, let me kind of open subscription just to show you what I'm going to talk about so that you understand that. So Azure, there are three important things. You've got tenants, you've got subscriptions, you've got regions, and geographics. That's how Azure is built upon. Now, tenant, as it relates to Azure, it's a single instance, a unit of an Azure Active Directory, and we call Azure AD, right? As a key piece of the Microsoft Cloud platform. All your applications that you want to access, they're going to be part of the tenant. And these tenants are globally unique, and they're scoped using a domain name that normally ends with on.microsoft.com, which in our case is something, as you will see here, it's going to be, so it's a tenant gracious field, so I can actually navigate to this, but I'll show you. I can see this domain name is ending with on.microsoft.com. It's how it always will end there. And each tenant will have a tenant ID in the form of an UID there. And I've seen some customers, they kind of choose to connect to their internal AD to Azure AD, and they can allow the single or, a same sign-on. So when you access your portal or leverage the command line tools to manage your resource subscription, you will always be authenticated at some point via the tenant. So the tenant is something which is important. And the subscription inside a tenant, as you can see here, I should have a subscription there. Let's see. Why don't I see a subscription right now? Something's not really right with the account for some reason. Let's see. As you can see, we are able to have our own tenant now, but we should have probably for some reason it's not showing. But subscription is a container in which all the resources of your Azure are going to be deployed. So if I have a subscription, I can pretty much do anything with the Azure as a system, as a product. That's something that's important there. So what we're going to do here, eventually in this case, that I've got my tenant created, right? What's time? I want to switch my tenant. Now, the way you do that, you can go in here on the top right, and you can click on the switch directory, right? I can say, this says that, you know what, I want to switch there. So there's also a way there where you can go here and I can say, okay, click on switch. And once you switch that, you will see that now I'm not going to be in that old Clyde where portal layer eventually. And you can see that I will be a part of this lab user or whatever there, but this time is first AD as a tenant there. That's the tenant I'm having here. So if I go to Azure Active Directory again, you will see now it's first AD that we gave, and this is the tenant ID. I said every tenant is going to have an ID, and this domain has to be globally unique. And right now, it's only one user that's a part of it. So, in how do we then manage these Azure Active Directory once it's there? So, in order for me to, let's say, allow users to authenticate by using Azure ID, I have to provision users and group these accounts. And I want to also make sure, let's say, probably the members of the group should be updated automatically based on their user job title. So we need to create a test user account tenant, and with a test user account, and the grant is that account limited permissions to resources in my subscription. That's my job. So I wanted to kind of do some stuff here eventually to make that happen. Let's say I have a IT Cloud Administrator group, or I have some members and I want to connect them, eventually do that, right? So let me show you how do we really create a user, right? It's very important to really understand that how do we create the users there and eventually do that. So we're in the Azure Active Directory, okay, as you can see here. And on this side, you've got different options to do this. So you've got manage, and you've got the users. And in the users, you can see we have got this user settings. And the user setting, you will see some basic configuration there. Let's see. So it says that who can register, who cannot register. So all these settings are there. So you should always know about these settings that a user can register your application or not there. It's a very, very important there. And in that case, if you even go all the users there, if you kind of go back to one set of users back in and go to your part of here, and if you select a user again, you will see on this side we've got certain user, right? So if you look at this user, it's going to show me the profile of the user. This is the user profile, right? Now, I want to be able to assign an AD Premium P2 license to my account. I want to be able to do that. But to do this, I have to do a couple of things. So you have to define the location. So I click on edit here. You can see edit a lot of aspects within this part here. And the usage location, I want to see if I can see an option for, because this tenant is going to be available in the US region only. So I'm going to make sure that I am a part of that region. Let's see. Usage location. Yep, there we go. So this, I want to be making that I am in the United States, so I can actually give a premium. So I can show you that a premium can be given there, and I can save that. So I had this is a default user which has everything there, and that's something you should always be doing so that the user should be able to do that. Now, in this part here, let's add a new user, and I'm gonna just call this username. Let's say I have something there. Let's call this user AZ140A81 user. That's going to be unique there, which is great. Let's give it the same name. I'm going to copy and paste the same name here. Let me put the I don't need to put a first name. I mean, first name and last names are not options. So that's one thing. You can have Azure to create a password for you, but I will say, you know what? Let me give the password. So let me put the password here, and there is my password there. It's a simple one. And in this, as you all remember, there was a usage location which we chose, and it was United States. Choose an option there. Let's say give a job title. What am I? I am a cloud administrator. And then let's say department, I will go to that, maybe 90. I think that would be good. And if you go at the top, I want to save this also because I may need it later. So just put in my user, because you should always keep it. This is the user that's going to be created at the part here. So once you do this, I think we'll be good. And let's create. Now you'll see this is a user that is created in the list of user. This is manually was created. And let's click on this user here eventually. And let's do a never here. And you can see this is my user that I have created there. And all these options which are available. And if I can look at this, and if I go to this assign roles, you can see there's nothing right in this case. So that means when you look at the user at all the part of it, initially you don't have any roles assigned. You have to assign the roles to the user. So it's very important and do this. So what role I have to assign? Let's assign this user role. Let's say I want this role to be, I want the administrator role be assigned, right? So let's search for user administrator. It's a role. I want to give this to user. Add. And again, this is added now. So now if I refresh, I should have the role here in some time, obviously. It takes some time to reflect, which is okay. Come on. This should have a role assigned. Yep, there we go. You can see here, their role is fine. Now let's try and log into this user. This is the user that we've just created. So let's see if this user is going to work. We're going to have a new encounter window, and let's go to portal.azure.com here. Oops, sorry. And remember, we have copied something, so I'm going to paste this user this time. That's the same user we created. I had a password there. Yep, that's my password. I have to change the password. It'll ask me to, hey, please go change the password. So let's do that too. Let's sign in. Oh, really? It say that I have seen this password so many times. So let's give a password that it hasn't seen yet. I hope I won't get option this time. Sign in. Now, I want to show you something. Now, let's say I've got this new user, and you can see this time I'm logged in with a user where I have given the permission to be an administrator. That's all. That's all the permission I've given. So I'm doing an identity control at this access. So what's going to happen when we are going to build a model like this eventually, that if I go here and look for the Azure Active Directory here, Azure Active Directory. Now, this user can access Azure Active Directory tenant. But it's not having access to Azure resources. It cannot do anything with that process. If I, let's say, go and launch a virtual machine, it won't be having access. If I start doing something, I have to, as you can see, if to start a trial or anything, but I can't launch a virtual machine. It says that, hey, you've got to have a subscription. You can't do this. And that's okay. Why? Because those access needs to be granted explicitly by using an Azure role-based access control there. And that's something you got to be knowing, that even making someone administrator, they will not be having all the access in all the access. Now, if you look at this, let's look at the user and go to user settings here. Now, this is the same user will log in. Now you can see I don't have any permissions to modify anything, right? But if you were in the previous case, which I was this user, I pretty much had, if I go to user here and first AD, and let's say use this user and go under user settings, the user, now this in user at pretty much everything there. So I was able to manage all the roles, all the units, all the options which were there. So I had no issues kind of doing anything there, and I had all these options there. So eventually you can see that even though I've made this user administrator, it doesn't have all these options there. But in user, if I go back here, and if I go to users and we can get a new user, we're going to actually create a new user. This user, because has the permissions to create a new user. And you will see the spot here. Let's create a new user. Let's call this user this. And I have a name here also. Let's give a name here. I want to create my own password. It's fine. Let's create a password. And the usage location, you know that, with this United States. Now I'm going to call this user probably, let's say, hey, you are my system administrator there. And the department, I'm going to say that this is an IT department, right? That's okay. All this fun there. And we're going to be also, I want to be able to copy this first. Copy. Go back here. Paste this new user. So this is another user. As you can see, it was 1, this is 2. And we're going to create that. As you can see, we've got 2 users now, right? So what we're going to do here, let's sign out of this aspect. And now you see I've got to create 2 users. That's it. Now remember I asked you that we want to be able to have groups, and we can create, assign, and those dynamic membership. So right now I added a permission to a users manually. How to do it in a much more dynamic set? So if I go back to an Azure portal here, as you can see, and if I go to the overview section here, and if I have there's an option for licenses. Let's look at the license here. Now, you will observe that it says no group assignment fine. And if you see in the product, I have all products to see managed there. And we're going to let's try and buy one. And let's see what we have here. Let's activate the free trial for the P2 here. There's a premium 2. And in a moment, this subscription will be successful. So if I refresh this here, under licenses, I should be having this. As I said, this always takes some time, so let's give it a moment. Well, we have bought a subscription now for us. Yep, there we go. As you can see, I have got a subscription under my name. And if I click on this, let's license the user to my users, obviously. Where are my users? Sometimes it just takes so much time for me to do things. Let's go to license again and see. Okay, so this is in here. All product looks fine. Assign. Let's add, I have 2 users. Let's add them. Okay, I got them here. User 1 and user 2. I want to assign them. So this is right. And we can figure assign. You can see here, I've got these 2 users. Now they've been assigned a license. So they would be having all the features that require that. Now, I was saying about the groups here, right? So let's go back to home. Let's create a couple of groups here. We go to a group, and you can see we don't have any group here. So let's create a new group. And I'm going to add some groups in this group. So the group type is security. Let's give it, what do I call it? Let's call it as IT Cloud Administrator. And group description, I'm going to call maybe Sorry, Cloud. No, this is him there. And in this membership type, as you can see, we have a sign and we have a dynamic user. This time, I'm going to be saying that, okay, you want to be a dynamic user. And if I go here, let's add a dynamic query here also, so that we know what's what. So I'm going to add these one based on the rule. I want to create a rule for that perspective. So let's choose a property. I want that to be a job. So if anyone's job title belongs to this one, if job title is equals, let's say, to what a cloud administrator, then I want them to be added to this. So this looks fine. Validate the rule. And save. So I've got a rule here, and you can see what that means. I want to tell how this works there, right? So let's create a group here. Okay, we've got IT Cloud Administrator. Let's have one more group. Call it maybe System Administrator. And System Administrator. Okay, dynamic users. And add a query again based on the job title. I would say equals value. I want them to be system administrator there. Okay, all good. Let's save and create. And we've got one is system, one is cloud. Maybe I can have this time. So we've got security people assigned dynamic, right? Let's have one assigned group also. We're gonna have an assigned group. Here's time. Security type is security. It's fine. What do I call it? Let's call this guy as IT lab administrators. And same stuff. But this time I'm gonna make membership as assigned, and all good. No members selected here. So I should have my groups created, the one I have. Mm, IT Cloud. Okay, there's one. And we had one more group. What was that? IT system. Okay, we have these two groups. Select. So we add two members to this group, okay? And we're gonna click on create. So there's one group where we've assigned everything, and there's one that we haven't done anything right. Now, if you look at the IT Cloud Administrator there, and if we go to members, we should have one user there, should be. We have IT Cloud Administrators. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Now, can you all see that we did not add this user to this group manually? How that happened? Now, this happened basically because there was a dynamic membership rule. And that's why this happened there. And if I go back to the other group, let's go to my system administrator. I should have the other user probably here. And there we go, the user number 2. So you can look at this, that the users are there eventually. And that's how we basically, create what we call as these groups and assign them with dynamic membership. So I don't have to really assign them manually. They, based on whatever roles they create, they can be assigned to a group, and I can, manage things eventually. And that's the part here that we can do here. And now, once we've created these set of users, what do we do next? Probably let's create a tenant here, right? So if I go back here to my Active Directory here and manage tenants, let's create one more tenant. Okay. Let's call this as probably a lab. And let's call it as dummy tenant. Make sure that's like right. Okay, that's all. Country seg to the Let's recreate and do this. JKS5. And it's going to take some time, like it did the last time also. That's okay. It's going to take its time like it did last time, probably a minute or two. And we're going to have one more tenant for us created. Should be a couple of minutes, should be done by now. All right, that's done. So let's navigate to this subscription in this dummy tenant we've created for us. Now, what I want to do here, same thing that now I want to create some, probably the guest users. Let's have the guest users this time created there. So if I go to the users, the user here, and I'm going to give a name. Let's call it as AZ104 1B80 user. Okay. I'm going to paste it here right again. Scroll down. I want to choose the password. Let's choose a password. And then job title. Let's choose that. Let's call it system administrator. I want it to be an ID button person, which is okay. So that's done here. I think, which looks fine. It's done here. Got a user created. And that's all good. Now let's do one thing. Let's go back to our old subscription. Okay. The first 80. Now, what I want to do, I want to invite this user that I've created to this subscription. He will be seeing like what we're doing. We're like kind of doing an entire process there. We'll go to user and let's have a new guest user. And I want to invite this. So the name I know is this. Principal email address I know is this. Now remember, this is a different tenant, as you can observe. Email address. Then usage location, United States. Job title, but I wanted this guy to be a type administrator and ID, and let's say I want to invite this. Now, once I invite this, I should have this user in my, oops, okay, it hasn't invited yet. Okay, it's invited. As you can see, there is a user that is invited now and it's called as a guest user. Very nice. And you can see that I've got a user from a different tenant to be a part of this eventually, right? As you all can observe carefully. So we've created a user, and the user is a part of this environment there. Now let's do one thing. Let's go with user here. And let's see. Let's add a membership for this user. And I have this group. Remember, we created this group here? So that was an assigned group. And now you can see this user is a part of the group eventually. And that's how you create the users and kind of move eventually everything here. So this is an important aspect for you to kind of do part. And obviously you want to be, I mean, if you don't need stuff, you're going to make sure that you kind of clean the things around here. So you don't want to make sure that things are kind of running here. You should always clean up your resources. As a practice, it's always very important that in Azure, you want to be able to clean things, right? So one of the things I want to quickly do, if I go to my Azure, and if I go to licenses, and I have all products, I have this user, will be a couple of license user, I would say, this and this. Let's remove their licenser. That's how you do this. Yes. I have removed the licenses. Failed. Either they're already removed. It should be removed here eventually. Come on. Yep, as you can see, they are removed. Let's go here and go to users. Let's remove a couple of users also. So I have this. Let's delete this user. That's a guest user. I don't need any more. And maybe create these other two also. Why to create have? Oops, sorry. Delete. Yep. Go ahead. And it's very important for you to clean the user because remember, everything is going to be charging you. I mean, even for your practice, when you do this, if you don't clean the resources, it's going to be crazy stuff. And then let's go to our groups. Let's select all the groups. Delete. Yep. There's one more I think we have. Let's use this one. Here also we had users, right? So I'm going to delete these two folks from here. Oh, sorry, not this one. Let's manage the tenants, and I also wanted to delete this tenant actually. I want to delete this tenant. Just get permission there, please. And a sec. Okay, I think this is good. So we're able to clean the resources, and I would say this pretty much brings to the end of the first part of the presentation. So what we've done here, we understood how do we create and configure the Azure Activity users. We understood how do we create those groups with assign and dynamic membership. We understood about creating Active Directory tenant and how do we eventually manage those guest users. So there was I think, a good demonstration of how we can do a lot of things eventually in the case of Azure. And that's something which is important. So now I'm going to take a quick short break here. And after that, we're going to start the next piece for the day, which is on a bit on the governance compliance, and we're going to get started. All right, sounds good, everyone? Leela, it's okay?
Yeah. How long would you like the break for?
Yeah.
Oh, you're setting a timer up yourself. Okay, perfect.
I'm a timer guy. Okay, see you all in 15.
Thank you.
That's running the wrong way. It's supposed to be a countdown, not this. Okay. Let's do it 0, 0. And let's meet in 15. All right. Let's see if we're back here. Am I audible to everyone? Leela, can you please confirm?
Yep, you sound great to me.
All right, fantastic. Just give me a moment. Let me get the other slides and everything up and running here. I'm just getting a couple of things. Come on. All righty, so we are going to move to the second piece for the day, and that's the only piece we're going to talk about. I mean, these are two things we want to talk about. I wouldn't say the only piece, but that's the fact. Now, in this segment, what we're going to talk about is administering the governance and compliance, and that's going to be as important as administering the identity. Now, let me give you an example so you can follow through. Let's say your company or your organization is moving to Azure, and the first step, they want to obtain an Azure subscription. And what you are responsible for obtaining an Azure subscription for your company. You're also responsible that you could manage the right cost. So, and then, this is a part which is a very important examination perspective that you have to understand everything. Now, in Azure, one of the most important thing that happens to exist is the regions. You're going to be knowing about regions and everything around this. So what are regions there? That means you should know how Azure infrastructure, number one, is established in the first place. Now, Azure is made up of data centers that are located around the globe. And these data centers, they are organized and they are made available to the end users by a region. A region, you can call it as a geographical area on the planet containing an at least or you can say potentially more than one data centers. And these data centers, they are in the close proximity and they are, network together with a low latency network. A few examples of a region would be a West US or a Canada or a West Europe, probably Australia East, all these things. And they are available in about 140 plus country that kind of happen there. So in the regions, remember, Azure has more global regions than any other cloud provider at this moment. So that's a good part. And these regions, they give customers the flexibility and the scalability that is needed to bring the application closer to the user. And all these regions, they preserve the data residency. They offer comprehensive compliance. You have a resiliency option. That means you're not going to fail yourself. And eventually, for a lot of Azure services, when you deploy a resource in Azure, you choose the region where you want your resource to be deployed. And there are some services or virtual machine feature which are only available in certain regions, like a specific virtual machine size of storage is not available everywhere. And some of the global Azure services that do not require to select region would be like an Azure Active Directory, like a traffic managed DNS. You don't need a region there, they're global service. And also remember, each Azure region is paired with other region within the same geography, which kind of makes a regional pair. So there's an exception, I think, Brazil South, which is like paired with the region outside geography, but there are a lot of other regions which are kind of paired eventually as a master. And that's something which is very important. So remember, in terms of the regional pair, when we say a regional pair, what we're saying that they're physically isolated. And Azure kind of prefers at least that if there are two regions, there needs to be at least 300 miles. They should have a 300 miles of separation between the data centers in a regional pair, although that's not like practical, possible on geography, but that's what they prefer. And all these physical data centers separation, they reduces the likelihood of a natural disaster or some kind of power outage, some kind of physical network outage. And there are some services which are also geo-redundant storage. That means it kind of gives you a replication to a paired region there. And if, let's say, there is a broad outage and then recovery of one region is going to be prioritized out of every pair. It's not like that they're going to focus on both the regions and eventually they can do more, right? So these applications, they are deployed across the region. They are guaranteed to have at least one of the regions recorded priority. And We have these planned Azure updates, which are rolled out to a paired region sequentially, not at the same time. That means every update is going to happen in one region, then another region, then all it's 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. It's not going to happen all at one time. And these updates, because they are rolling in nature, they minimize the downtime, I would say. They help you to reduce your bugs and their logical failures there. And a region that are going to reside within the same geography as its pair to the kind of are there to so that you can meet the data residency requirements for the tax law. So if you want to make sure that my data stays in my region, then you know that has to be part of the same pair eventually. We also have the Azure subscription. Now, what is that? Azure subscription is a logical unit of Azure services that is linked to an Azure account. So billing for Azure services is done pretty much on the per subscription basis. So let's say if your account is the only account associated with a subscription, then you are the one responsible for the billing. And these subscription, they help you organize access to the cloud service resources. They also kind of help you to control how the resource usage is reported, it's billed, or it's paid for. And each subscription, they can have a different billing and payment setup. So you can have a different subscription, different plans by department, by project, by regional office, so on. And every cloud service kind of belongs to a subscription. And there's a subscription ID. We had a tenant ID, we have a subscription ID that's also required for all these programmatic operations. So eventually, in Azure, we have an Azure account. So all these subscription, they have an account. Your account is simply an identity in Azure Active Directory or in a directory that is trusted by Azure AD, like your work or school organization. If you don't belong to one of these organizations, you can sign up for an Azure account by using your Microsoft account, which is also a trusted Azure AD. Now, every Azure subscription is associated with an Active Directory, so your users and services that access the resources of the subscription, they first need to authenticate with Azure Active Directory there. And there are different ways that you can get a subscription. You have an enterprise agreement, you have Microsoft resellers who do this, you have partners, and you can even have your personal free account that kind of happens with this. So there are different options to do this. So if we talk about enterprise agreement, it's a customer that can add Azure to their agreement by making an upfront monetary commitment Azure. They will say, you know what, Azure, I'll give you X amount of money upfront. And that commitment is consumed throughout the year by using a combination of a wide variety of services Azure offers. And this is one of the agreements which has about a 99.95 monthly SLA. And there's a reseller, so you can buy Azure through the open licensing program, which again gives you, a simple, a flexible way to purchase these cloud services from your reseller. And if you already purchased an Azure in open license key, you can activate a new subscription, or you can have some credits. That's one way. You can even have partners there. Now, you can find a Microsoft partner who can design, implement your Azure cloud subscription. These partners, they have the business and technology expertise, so they can recommend solution that can meet the unique needs of your business. And you can have a personal free account, so you can get started with Azure right away, and you won't be charged until you choose to upgrade. So obviously, depending on that, you can have a usage model for you. And that usage model is extremely important because Azure offers you a free and a paid subscription option, which basically suit different needs and implementation. And the most commonly used subscription are the free pay-as-you-go enterprise agreement and the student. Now, if I talk about free, the name says free, it gives you about $200 of worth of credit to spend on any service for the first 30 days. And you have free access to most popular Azure product for about 12 months and access to, I believe, about more than 25 plus products that are always free. And Azure free subscription is an excellent way for a new user to get started. And you just need to set up a free subscription. You need a phone number, a credit card, and a Microsoft account. And that's it. And these credit card information, they're basically used for identity verification only. You're not going to get charged for any service until you upgrade there. You have a pay-as-you-go model, which we call as a payee. That's going to charge you a monthly for the services you used in that billing period. And this subscription type is appropriate for a wide range of users, I would say, from individuals to small businesses and many large organizations as well. And you have this enterprise agreement, which provides you flexibility to buy the cloud services and software license under one agreement. You have a lot of discounts for the licenses. You've got software assurances there. It's targeted at enterprise sales organization. And you have Azure for student also. So it's kind of, it gives you about $100 in credits to be used in first 12 months. Plus, you get a lot of select service free without requiring credit card at sign up, which is there, but you must verify your student status through your organizational email address. So you have to give that. You can also have a CSP, which is um, uh, a kind of a cloud partner model, which is like a enterprise section there. Now with Azure, there's a way that you can implement a complete cost management. I mean, with Azure product service, you pay only for what you use. And as you create and use your resources, you're going to be charged for the resources. You can use Azure cost management and billing features to conduct all these billing administrative tasks there. And you can manage those billing access to cost there. And you also, it's kind of feature to monitor, get a lot of feature to monitor, and you can help and control your Azure spending, and you can optimize Azure resources used there. So cost management kind of shows you the organizational cost, usage patterns with a lot of advanced analytics and reports in the cost management kind of show the usage-based cost that is consumed by your services and all these third-party marketplace offerings. And these costs are based on the negotiated prices and factor in reservation and Azure hybrid benefit discounts. I mean, collectively, the reports going to show you the internal and external cost for the usage and Azure Marketplace. And there are obviously the charges like reservation purchases, support, taxes. They're not kind of, it's from the reports, but the reports kind of help you understand your spending and your resource use, and they can help finding spending anomalies. And you have a lot of predictive analytics that's also labeled. So cost management uses Azure management resources. You've got budgets, you've got recommendations. You can use Azure portal or different APIs for export automation to integrate your cost data with external system process there. And you have a lot of billing control management there. And the way your cost management help you plan for and control your costs. So you can do a cost analysis, you can create a budget, you can get recommendations, you can export your cost and data. Now, what is a cost analysis? So you use the cost analysis to explore, analyze your organizational cost. And you can view the aggregated cost by organization to understand where the costs are accrued and then to identify the spending trends. You'll be able to see the accumulated costs over the time to estimate these monthly and quarterly or even the yearly cost trends against a budget. And the budgets, they help you plan for and meet those financial accountability in your organization. And they kind of help you to prevent the cost thresholds or limits from being surpassed. And these budgets can help you inform others about, hey, that you're spending proactively, you got to manage the cost there. So it's very important there. They've got recommendations which can show you how you can optimize and improve the efficiency by identifying the ideal and underutilized resources. So they can show these less expensive resource options. So when you act on the recommendations, you change the way you use your resources to save the money. And to act, you first view the cost optimization recommendations. So you can view these potential usage inefficiencies. And then you would act on a recommendation to modify your Azure resources used to have a more cost-effective option. And you can verify the action that you want to make sure based on recommendation there, what's the recommendation there. And let's say if you're using some external systems to access or review a cost management system, then you can even export the data from Azure, and you can set a daily schedule report on CSV format and get there, and then you can access the data from your external system there. That's also there. In Azure, to also manage the cost, a very important thing that we have to keep our resource tag there. We can apply tags to your resources to logically organize them by some categories. And each tag will consist of a name and a value. For example, you can apply the name, let's say, an environment, and the value would be a production or dev to a resource. And once you create a tag, you associate them with an appropriate resources. And with the tags in place, you can retrieve all the resources. You create all the resources with that tag name and the value, which means that you can retrieve those filter resources from different sources. This is a great feature about in that case. And I would say perhaps one of the best uses of tags is to group the billing data. So when you download the usage CSV for the services, that tags basically appears in that column, and you can then group the virtual machine by a cost center or a production environment, whichever kind of makes sense to the product. And there are a few things I would say you should remember for the cost. Remember each resource or group, they can have I believe, a maximum of 50 tag names for valid pairs. And these tags, they can apply to a resource group. They're not really inherited by the resource. So you have to kind of put it manually. And eventually the objective is to help us with the cost saving. And that's the most important thing. Now, in cost saving, Azure has something called as a reservation. Now, reservations are something the way you reserve a resource. It helps you save money by paying upfront or ahead. And you can pay for a 1 year or 3 year of a virtual machine and SQL database compute capacity or Cosmos DB throughput or whatever other resources you have there. And the prepaying allows you to get a scan of the resources used there, and reservation can significantly reduce your virtual machines or SQL database compute or Cosmos DB or whatever resource you have up to, I think, about a 72% off on the pay-as-you-go pricing. And reservation provide you a billing discount and doesn't really uh, affect the runtime set of your resources. And when you go on this hybrid benefit, it's a benefit that is a pricing benefit for a customer if you have a license with a software assurance. So Azure hybrid benefit helps you to maximize the value of your existing on-the-prem Windows Server and SQL license investment when you migrate to Azure. That means there's an Azure benefit saving calculator that can help you that if I already have an existing Azure account, Microsoft license, then I would be paying extra money for that. So you can actually use Azure hybrid benefit there. You have Azure credits is a monthly credit benefit that allows you to experiment with and develop and test new solutions. For example, as a Visual Studio subscriber, you can use Microsoft Azure at no extra charge there. I mean, with your monthly Azure credit, Azure is your personal sandbox for dev and test. You go to your regions where the pricing can vary from one region to the region, even if in the US, and you want to double check the pricings in various regions to see if you can save a little eventually in that case. And remember, there was these budgets, so we can leverage budgets and to kind of they gotta help me to plan for my organization accountability. So with budgets, you can count for Azure services you consume or subscribe to during a specific period, and they can help you inform others about their spending or proactively manage the cost there, and you can monitor how spending kind of progresses over time. And when the budget thresholds you created are exceeded, you get kind of get these notifications triggered there that hey, something goes wrong. And there's a great pricing calculator I would suggest you can use there, which can help you to estimate all the areas of resource like compute and networking, so you can get what is the tentative budget you can have there. That's something we saw. So this is something that we want to know from the perspective of subscription, how subscription can happen to exist there. Then we have a piece called as the policy. Now, what policy is? Let's talk about that. Let's say that you have you're part of a company, and your company is subject to a lot of regulation and compliance rules, and you want to ensure that, or your company wants to ensure that each department, you can say, implements and deploys resources exactly and correctly. And you decide to use your policy to implement those compliance measures there. So what can we do? We can create, number one, the management groups. Now, what happens there, if your organization has a several subscription, then you may need a way to efficiently manage those policies and compliance for those subscription. And there are these Azure managed groups that provide you a level of scope above your subscription. And you organize these subscription into containers. We call them as a management group. And you apply your governance condition to the management group. So the management group, they enable the organizational alignment of your subscription through what we call as hierarchies you can see there. And you can have a target of policies and spend. You can budget across the subscription, and they can inherit it to the hierarchies there. You have a complete compliance and cost reporting by organization. So there's a lot of things that kind of happen there. And all the subscription within a management group, they automatically inherit the conditions which are applied to the management group. For example, you can apply policies to a management group that kind of limits the regions available for a virtual machine. And this policy would be applied to all the management groups or subscription or whatever resources that are having under the management group by only allowing the VMs to be in that region. So we can actually have those featured there and implement there. And you can create a management group from the portal itself eventually. And once you create a group, I'll show you very soon. We have a managed group ID that is the identifier that is used to submit the commands and the groups there and the display name there. So you can kind of manage all the resources eventually on a geographical scale. That's one thing. Then you want to have these policies. Now, Azure Policy is a service in Azure that you can use to create and assign and manage your policies. And these policies, they enforce a different rules over the resources. So the resources are going to stay compliant with your corporate standard and SLAs. And Azure Policy kind of runs evaluations and scans for resources which are not compliant. And the main advantage of policy are the areas of enforcement and compliance, scaling, and remediation. And these enforcement and compliance, so you kind of turn on these built-in policies or build those custom ones for the resource type. You can apply policy that's scalability. I mean, I can apply policy to a management group, and then with that, I can control my entire organization with and apply multiple policies there, and I can do real-time remediation. That's basically on existing resources there. So your policy will be important for you if your team kind of runs an environment where you need to govern maybe multiple engineering team, or you have to manage multiple subscription, or you have to actually need for to standardize how resource configure, or maybe manage your regulatory compliance there. So you have these there, and obviously there's a lot of use case. I mean, you can specify the resource type that your organization can deploy, or you can specify a set of virtual machines code that you're going to deploy. Maybe I can restrict the location of my version that can specify where to deploy resource. I would say that no one should be able to deploy resource in West US, and you can have policy for that. You can enforce that every resource needs to have a tag and a value there, and you can even audit for backup service if enabled for auto virtual machine. So kind of define this process there. And the way you create these Azure policies is basically you have to browse the policy definition. Now, a policy definition expresses what to evaluate, what action to take. And every policy definition has a condition under which it's enforced. And it has an accompanying effect that can take place in if the conditions are met, let's say. For example, you could prevent virtual machines from being deployed if they're exposed to a public IP address. Then you create initiative definitions, which is a set of policy definitions that can help you to track your compliance state for a larger goal. For example, I want to ensure a branch office of mine is compliant there. So that's initiative definition. You have the scope of that initiative. That means I can limit the scope of this initiative definition to management group, to my subscription, to my resource group, whatever that case there. And I can then view those results there. And so once these initiative definitions are assigned, we can evaluate the state of the compliance for the resources or individual resources and subscription there. So the way you do this is eventually what you do is you create a policy definition, as I said, and there are a lot of built-in policy definitions for you to choose from. You can sort them by category, which will help you choose them what you need there. So you have an allowed version of school as a policy, which can help you, let's say, to specify a set of virtual machine that your owner can deploy. And there's an allowed location policy, which allows you to restrict the location that your organization can specify when they're deploying resources. And the allowed location policy can be used to enforce your geo-compliance requirement. And when there isn't any applicable policy, you can add a new policy definition. And you can import a policy definition from a GitHub, and new policy definitions are added pretty much, I would say, every day there. So that's one thing. Once you have this policy definition, you create initiative definitions. So once you determine which policy definition you need, you can create an initiative definition, and this definition will include more than one policy. And there's a quick list on the right side of the initiative, as you can see here, which kind of helps you make a decision there. So you kind of do this as a part there. Then you scope these definitions. So once our initiative definition is created, you can assign the definitions to establish the scope, and scope will determine what resource or grouping of resource to policy assignment gets enforced on. And you can select the subscription and then optimally a resource group also. And once you apply the policy, you want to be able to see the compliance. That means once the policy in place, you can use the compliance blade. You can to review these non-compliant initiatives, non-compliant policies, non-compliant resources, and these policy conditions, they are evaluated against resources. So when the conditions is met, those resources are marked as non-compliant. Although the port does not show the evaluation logic, the compliance set result is shown there that hey, it is compliant or not. And that's going to be the way of how you can define this as a process or as a system done. So let's see a couple of things on how this really work before we kind of move forward. So let me get the slide here, my screen up and running. So what I want to show you, I want to show you a couple of things on the side of you know definitions here. Now give me a moment. I'll show you how this will all work. Okay. So what I want to do, I want to create Active Directory users and see what roles I can assign them and everything kind of give the option there. So let's see what we can do eventually as an option there. So remember we spoke about the management group. So let's go to our Azure portal. Let's sign in. That's weird. Give me a moment, please. Why is my username and a password? Give me a sec, everyone. Let's use this as a portal here. So what happens here, the first thing I'll show you is management group we've spoken about. Now, if you see the management group, I would say that you are registered as a directory admin, but you do not have necessary permissions to access the root management group there, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to fix this first. So we go to Azure Active Directory. And let's go to properties. Access management for your resources. You have to define a setting that yes, I'm going to do this. And now let's refresh this page. Okay. So now you can see I have an option to start using management group, and this is something you as a setting you can always enable. If you don't have the permission, you have to make sure that you give the permission to a resource that hey, I can create resources there. So this is so let's click on start using management group. Okay, let's give it a moment. It says that we're going to experience some delay. Let's see what the delay should be or could be. Let's see. I'm going to refresh it. And this happens sometime, I mean, when you launch a resource, it's no big deal. As you can see, we have this done here, and we're going to create our group, and I'm going to copy this. Let's call this as MG1, and so we call this as management group 1 here, and submit. Now we should be able to see our group here. My group isn't visible yet. And there we go. We've got a group here, which is the one I just created, right? Now, in this group, I want to go ahead and I want to add a subscription. But let's see how many subscription I have, just to validate. Okay, so the MSD and one is the active one. Okay, so now I know what my subscription is. So what I'm going to do here, if you see here in this case, I want to add a subscription to this management group so that anything I can add can be done for this group. So you see here, I have this. That's weird. Uh, let's see what's the ID for this one. Is this? Is that a subscription? Probably by an ID. Where is this subscription moving? And I am in the default directory, which is great. For some reason, my subscriptions are not visible. And this is saying already why my subscriptions are not visible. You think from here I can move it. Or let's me do one thing. Give me a moment here. We're gonna fix it right away. I'm gonna see if I can get an Azure Pass for me, which will help me to get this done. I think I should have an Azure Pass. Okay. Just give me a second here, everyone. I'm gonna get an Azure Pass here for me. give me a moment, okay, everyone? I'm just gonna get this sorted. Alrighty, just getting there. Start. So the reason I'm doing this because I don't want to get in a situation where my main subscription kind of, goes crazy. Because this is a demo I'm doing for you. And I have these dummy subscription that I've used for all these demonstration. Just give it a couple of minutes. I'm generating a boss for me. Okay, I think where are my Azure subscription? Why can't I get it? This is weird. Just give me a moment, guys. This is something to sort out right away. 400, there we go. Okay, let's start. I hope I get this. Now, those who don't know what Azure Pass is, by the way, just to give you a heads up, so it's going to give you about $100 and 30 days of free access to Azure. And this is going to end based on whatever comes first. So if you consume $100 first, or if you have the, lapsed 30 days, then this is going to lie. But it's a good way. So when you will do these labs or the class officially with Netcom, then you can get access to these for free, and you would be able to access Azure for a long, long time. I mean, for at least 30 days until everything kind of gets expired, which I think is fantastic. So that's one of the benefits of doing the classes with Netcom, that you kind of get free access to all these stuff. So mine is, I'm going to generating as an authorized instructor. I have an access to some of the Azure passes, but let's say if I get them, I hope this time. So my portal is causing a lot of issue. I can't really access them. If it doesn't work, then obviously I'm going to be using the other way. Let me see. Okay, let's see if that works. Because if you see here, my older subscription, the past subscription, I can see these two and they're kind of expired. I have a subscription with an active one, but if I move it to the new one, that's gonna be a bit crazy here. See if I can get. Okay, there we go. I'm almost there. It just takes sometimes to generate this crazy amount of stuff. I think I would be able to get a subscription very soon. Okay, got it. Everyone got it. Let's see if that works. Now the question is, it should work also. So let's claim it. And oh, wow. Now that's a new message. Fantastic. Which I knew this was going to happen. So I have other subscription in place. Now I know that's not going to be the one that's get consumed there. So give me a moment. Okay, let's see. This one is new. And I hope this is going to work. Okay, there we go. Finally, we're able to get a subscription. I'm so sorry for the small mess that I wouldn't call it a mess, but this delay that happened. It takes sometimes Microsoft takes its own time to give you things. Unfortunately, I don't have a control on that, but now we have a subscription which I think is great. So let me sign in, and you will see that in a moment time I will be able to get a subscription. And what is going to happen with the subscription that I can use it then, so I don't have to really worry about, and I can give you a better demonstration so you know that you are like in a better shape. So it's take now you can see setting up the account. Basically, what's doing at the behind the scene, it's actually running my subscription, saying that okay, let's give it to Vishal. That's what's doing, so that we all can practice around what we're trying to achieve. Okay, looks like this is moving fine. So let's see what can happen here. So let's go here and let's look at the subscription. This time I should have one more. I mean, we should have a lot more actually. And I think, yep, fantastic. We've got a subscription with us, everyone. I'm gonna quickly, rename this so that I know that's gonna work. Let me rename this quickly. And the ID is ending with 387. Okay, so let's go back here and go to our group. Let's refresh this web page also for once so that Okay. Add subscription. Let's see if you get that option. Really? That's okay. We're gonna actually do the other way. For subscription, I'm gonna use this new. I'm gonna move this to this other one, and we will be good this time. And there we go. And you can see this was the step we want to do. So we're gonna move a subscription there. All right, as you can see, there's one screen under this, so we are good in this case. All righty, great. If I go this now, let's see if we have, okay, fantastic. As you can see, we've got a subscription part here. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a role-based access control for us. So, let's see if I can have that also running. So if I use the other machine, so I have some files that I've downloaded there just to show you how to create a role-based access control. So if I go here, to the two, should be in the all files. F drive. And should be in the all files. And I have a small file. Let's see, it should be under two, probably. Yep, that's fine. So let's open this with Notepad. Oh. So opening Visual Studio, which is okay. Yes, I'm gonna exit because I wanted to open Notepad. And let's open this file in the Notepad. Okay. So as you can see where I have to put in subscription ID in one place. So my subscription ID, if I'm going to go back to go to portal.azure.com. And let's log in with my ID. So remember we had a subscription that we've just added. We're going to add the subscription here this time. And you'll be able to manage, and you can see this is the account workspool and the account which I explained to you a few moments back. No, I want to be signed in. Okay, so this was a new subscription we had there. Let me add this, add the subscription ID. Yep. And we will be changing that with this. Just fine. Let's go back, save it. I think that looks good. Now, let's go to our Cloud Shell. A Cloud Shell is a Bash and a PowerShell enabled virtual container that Azure gives you if you want to do things. But I want to do things, so I'm going to use it eventually for us. As you can see, it's gonna, so basically what it's doing behind the scene, if you are from Azure background in any case, it's actually creating a small virtual machine for me in which I can run my CLI jobs. I want to do some CLI actions now. Gonna take some time. There are a lot of things which needs to be all about patience. This is on patience. All right, we got it here. And you can see I'm in the PowerShell terminal, which is great. Now remember the file I have, I'm going to upload that file here quickly. Go to upload and this labs to, there we go. Upload complete. So let's go ahead and I'm going to create a custom role definition in this case with the file that I've just added. Uh-oh. Not going to create the roles. And there we go. You can see the role has been created, which I think is fantastic. So the red role-based access control pair. So let's quickly go here and let's go to our Azure Active Directory. And we're going to go to users. And let's create a couple of users here, like we did before. Call this user 10402. And the name also going to be the same here. Let me create the password. Put the password here. I've got the password here, which is great. And like we did before, I'm going to copy this. Control N, paste it. And you all know what this is. This is my user that we have just, we're going to create Atlas user. And I think that's all is good. Let's just create this user. So this is there. Now, if I go back to our management group, and we have this management group, remember, and if you see we have an access control option, I am here, which is again what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to add here, and I'm going to add a role assignment. And what I want to do is I want to, let's say, do I have a support? So a support request contributor custom role. It's there. And let's do one thing. Let's go with that user. We just create this user, right? Let's use this user here. Paste. Done. Let's put the password. Sign in. Obviously, I have to change the password. Sorry. No one. Machine. Let's. Okay, let's change the password. Okay, sign in. Now, if I go to resource groups for this one, and you will see resource groups. And what is that? AZ104. Okay, so if I go back here, let's give it a name here. Dummy resource group, create. We go back to this user again. You should be able to see the resource groups at least. We added this other part here. Let me see why they are not able to see this. See, oh, I didn't add the user. Okay. Well, I was saying, why wasn't I able? I didn't add the user in the first place. So this is the user we created and say. Now we should. So what you can see that this user we have just created, this user will be able to see the resource groups. If I go back to the resource groups, as soon as maps, so it's going to take some time to map. As you can see here, you can see that this cannot go inside a resource group because it's giving an error there, right? So nothing can be there, right? So what we can do here, how do we fix these things? So if you go here and let's say type for help and support, and look at the part which makes it really interesting. And there's a problem. Let's create a support request. Let's choose a probably, what do I choose? Service subscription limit quota. Issue type would be service. They've got service subscription limits. So what you can see, so now I want to show you, right? Because we're not going to get a request, but there's no need for that. But observe this carefully, because I am not able to, if you look at this carefully, what's happening here. So I'm able to see the subscription. Now, so my resource access is very limited here, right? But if I go to my resource group, what you will observe that I can see, oh, this is, sorry about that. If you go here, which is yeah, you can see here, I can look at, this is my contact. I can look at the resource groups now. If I go inside a resource group, or maybe go in this one, you can see I can't see any resource inside that. Why? Because I'm not allowed to do that. So what we're doing here, even though we have set of users, we're able to give them set of permissions on that user side, and that's going to be an interesting part. So we can obviously create a resource, a request, and kind of ask to do this and kind of get jobs. But this is something how you can eventually, create what we call as a management group. And within the management group, you can then go ahead and then have a set of users to kind of do a job, which is again a very interesting feature that you would be able to do that. So that's a part that I wanted to kind of address this, but you should know that this is how we create these user groups and do this. And obviously, I want to quickly do one thing, which I don't need. I want to delete this um, resource groups quickly just to kind of make sure I don't keep charging there. But you see there what happening here, that we can have set of resource groups, we can have management groups, which I showed there before. And those set of management group job is to eventually, oh, I can delete it because I don't have permissions there. As you can obviously again understand. Let's close this. So we go to, and again, cleaning up is a very important thing. You always have to clean up. Now I should have a resource group, the new one. We're gonna delete this one quickly. And this is one way of how we can actually leverage the management group as a feature or the concept and get our things done. So let's just quickly clean up everything here. And we've had users. I had a user created, so I'm going to go to a user. And after we'll take a quick short break. And after the break, we'll come back and we will just do one. I'll give you one more demonstration, and that will be the end of our beautiful webinar. Delete the user. Mm, I go to our management group. We had an IMA role created. Let's delete that also. Yep, we had this. Remove that. Okay. Now we have this. So I'm going to move the subscription back. Now see what we have to do. We have to move the subscription back to the root. Move back to the root. What's wrong? Yep, root group, please. So that it's a part of the root group here. So what we have just done before we take a break. So what we have done here quickly, we have implemented a management group. I created a role-based access control, a silent control, and you saw that I was able to kind of get things done. Now, what I want to demonstrate you after we take a quick break and come back is how do we apply Azure policy, and that would be the end of this. All right, everyone. So one quick break, and we'll be fine there. Leah, we'll take a quick short break, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
All right. See you all, and let's meet in 15. Right, went back here from the break.
Welcome back, everyone.
Alrighty. So this is going to be the last piece that we're going to be reviewing today is how can we manage the governance. And if you remember, we spoke about the policies and how we can create and assign tags and stuff with the policies, right? So what we're going to do here is I want to create and assign a tag resource group um, from a portal, right? So basically what we're going to do, we're going to add and open this. Oh, I deleted my Cloud Shell. My bad. Let's create a Cloud Shell again. We should be having a story account just to make sure that it's there. Happen. So you can see here, which is all done for us. So what we're going to do here, oh, it's built in the drive. Okay, let's do a DF. Alrighty, this looks fine here. If you see here, we're able to look at the storage account here for us. And that's okay. We've got it right. It's saying the host is down. Let's see, what do we have there? So if we go to storage accounts, let's see. We've got a resource group here. So if you look at this on every group, you have an option of tags here, right? Now this tag section, I can tag it. Let's call a tag as role, and I will say the role is infra in this case. And once you do this, so we can apply a tag to a resource. Now, what I say, I want to apply a policy. Now, how do we apply a policy? Let me quickly show you that. So if I go to this type policy here, you'll see in the offstream, we've got definitions under this. And I said remember I said there are a lot of built-in policies. You can see there's so many built-in policies which are there eventually. And there's so many policies that involve the use of tags as also an option. So that's one thing. But let's see, there's a policy which is using tags. So search tag. They require a tag and as found resource. Let's look at this policy. And if you see here, this basic policy which enforces a tag required there. So I'm going to assign this. And I want to assign this to the scope is going to be my subscription, which is the new sub, if you remember. And we're going to use the storage account, which is this one. Select, and I think that would be fine. Go to next. Remember the tag always be given here was the role and infra. And then we go to next. We have a remediation. In the remediation is the part we can have this living check, but I mean you can create a mag guarantee if you have a modified condition there, but for us we're not gonna do this, so all good here. You can give a non-compliant message if you want to give one, but our objective is to check how this really operate there. Now, once this will happen, this takes about 3 to 4 minutes to really get this policy in place. So what I want to do here, I want to go ahead and let's create a resource. And let's search for storage. Oh, let's just search storage. There we go. And remember what I said, the storage account has a policy that anything needs to have a tag. If a tag is not there, you will see it's going to fail there. Okay. So advance, next data protection. Okay. Now you can see there's a one there. This has saying that it's gotta have a tag. If I'm not putting a tag, and if I do review and create, you will see it's failing. So what's happening here that we're able to actually enforce a policy. And if I put a tag policy's role, and the tag, if you remember, was infra. If I do review create, what did I miss in basics? Oh, I haven't given the storage account name, dummy account, some random number. All right, so we go here to the two and roles infra. You can see here that we are able to get this whole objective here because the role tag needs a value as infra and it will not have it. So we can actually ensure the tagging is there, and if the tag is not there, it's not going to do this job for you. So I can just say role, and you can just define infra. It says needs a value INFRA, which is fine. I think we have it, so it's able to do a compliance. So what we can do here, that once this policy is giving me error, right? We can look at the error and it's not going to work it, but we can apply a policy via a tag also. I mean, we can apply tagging via policy right away, which is again would be a good part. So if we go back to the policy here and just to observe this carefully, what's going to happen here. So you can see here that it's giving me that some of this resource is out of compliant here. So you can look at the description and what the compliance out of there. It's going to show you all those options there. But what I'm going to show you here, quickly go to assignments there. And you can see the tagged one that we had here. So this is a policy we created there. So you can see this is a policy assignment we've had it for us, which is a tag name, a role, and the value was infra. That's what we kind of defined there, right? And we can actually delete this assignment. We don't need this assignment for now. We can actually assign a policy, and we can go to a subscription group. This one to the resource. Oops. New sub. This select. And if you see here, we have some policy definitions. So we can say, let's see which we have. We have one for inherit. If I remember, inherit a tag from resource group. Yeah. These are policies which is going to inherit a tag from a resource group if it's missing, which is great. And you can define a review, and in the next part here, you can have a parameter. Remember the parameter was role. So we can say, let's use this, and we can say create a remediation task, and it's inherit a tag from this. And this policy has a modified document, which is okay for us, and we can review and create that. Now, once we go here, and you will observe this, once you have a policy that's going to apply this automatically, you go to home, go to storage accounts, and you can see this in process. This will take some time. If I create a pause here, name, some dummy, whatever step, next, 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 next. And we can see that I could have a role here. And this is now going to give me these roles eventually on its own. So now once you have these set of aspects, sorry, I think we're having this, we're having a couple of other things. So now what happening here that you can see we have got a policy, sorry, a role, key and value. And this is now going to ensure, because this whole thing take about 10-15 minutes to map completely. But what I wanted to show you that I can actually apply a policy and that will enforce me to choose a tag, and that will eventually help me to get started. And this is also a very important feature that you can ensure that none of your resources will actually ever get deployed without the policy removed. And that is something very important. So this was the last thing that we're going to talk about today, and that's is gonna, bring us to the end of the presentation where we kind of understood about the process behind this whole thing. So this would bring us to the end of the beautiful webinar for today. And as said, I'm going to quickly go ahead and delete my assignments also, just to make sure that there is nothing that I would need for now needs to be there. So yeah, I think I am good for now, and you can take it from there.
Thank you so much. As always, you have so much information and so much knowledge on this subject. I know we could go for like another 5 hours easily. But since we all have lives and it is a Saturday, we are going to go ahead and while you guys get your questions into the question panel, we're going to hear from Mary, and she is our director of vendor and product here at Netcom Learning. She's going to introduce some of our promotions and webinar related courses. I'm going to make you the presenter, Mary. You should be able to share your screen now. How are you doing this Saturday?
Well, I am enjoying terribly, all of this information that Vishal has shared with us. I'm sure that you'd like to know more. So what I want to do right now, Leela, can you see my screen?
I can't. Well, yours says, yeah, it's yours.
The next
It looks very
okay.
similar to his first slide for a second there, and I had to.
Yes, I'd like to piggyback on what Vishal discussed because it is it's the tip of the iceberg. So he showed us what actually administering Azure is, and that is part of this class that Microsoft has to prepare you for the different roles. And what I want to do in the next 5 minutes is just walk you through, and you'll also find this information on your handouts. And if you have any questions, feel free to, as always, send an email to webinar@netcomlearning.com. So I just wanted to go through, I always go back to this cloud is accelerating the skills gap. And why is that? This is not a negative statement, but in fact, it's more of a realization that the cloud is maturing, consistently evolving, every day. As we're talking about Azure, as Microsoft keeps on adding new innovations to help companies go to market faster, scale, make use of their technology. And so, this is quite old, but still, what we want to see is that CIOs have a cloud first IT strategy. Again, if you are in your digital transformation, cloud definitely supports that. And what we're seeing is 85% of companies want to integrate cloud architecture in their organization. And now it's 2021, and in fact, we're going to 2022. This is important because we're really seeing a lot of new roles that are in the cloud. So whether you are moving your on-prem team to develop their cloud skills, or you're hiring new people, one of the things that we can utilize is that we can refer to certification, or if we're an individual who wants to, get a better job in the cloud, then what better way to show the employers but get certified? So here are some more stats. Certified employees get greater recognition because that is something tangible that employers can see. And obviously, if you're certified, you're sure to get earn more than people who are not certified. And this is also a cause for advancement in your organization. And for the decision makers, we may have decision makers here. If you're hiring new candidates to fulfill your cloud team, what better way than to require certification? Because again, that is the tangible measurement of their knowledge on the different cloud roles. And we've seen this. There's several studies here that they're more productive because they have been trained and verify their skills via certification. And overall, the business impact is there. Once you have the team that is well skilled and knows the job. So again, for Microsoft certification, why is it valuable? The exams are actually aligned to the different job roles. So you've been hearing this probably, probably 5 years ago. It's all about the technology, but really it is not. It doesn't fulfill the job that you're doing. But now with Microsoft, they have undergone their job task analysis and they come up with a better curriculum to help you with that particular job. You also demonstrate the application of real world skills, and these are verifiable achievements that you can show on your social media profile, and obviously submit to your employers as well. So I want to go into the administrator profile courses that you may want to look into, because it's just not one course that you may want to have, but if you're also deciding on other people in your team, these are some courses that you may want to consider. So we have the fundamental class. So if you have a team that is moving or wants to get the basics or wants to build that foundation, there are actually two fundamental classes that you can consider. You have your 1-day Azure Fundamentals, which focuses on the concepts. And if you do want to get that hands-on, there's also an available 2-day fundamental courses. So I'm sorry, course. So with this, you want to learn about cloud concepts, Azure services, workloads, security, privacy, pricing, and support. And there is an exam attached to this. Right now, earlier, Vishal discussed this. It is for the AZ 104, Microsoft Azure Administrator. So with this, if you are implementing, managing, monitoring an organization's Azure environment, you're also responsible for governance, storage, compute, virtual networks in a cloud environment, provisioning, sizing, monitoring, etc. So this class is for you, as well as there is a certification attached to it. Okay, now another thing is the architect. So there are two classes that will prepare you for this, the EZ 303, which is technologies, and then you have your 304, which is more on design. So if you're you are subject matter expert or responsible for designing, implementing solutions on Azure, that includes compute, network storage, security. You're also responsible for advising your stakeholders and translating business requirements into secure, scalable, and reliable cloud solution. So this is the course and the exam that you want to take. Now, the next course is, the next certification is security. So this is a vital component. So it really depends on how big or how small the team is, but sometimes you're wearing several hats. So you may want to consider having this person, or maybe it's you, it's also the same admin that's handling security. So this person is designing and implementing, designing and implementing security, and you're also identifying and remediating vulnerabilities by using a variety of security tools. You're implementing threat protection. You're responding to the security incident escalations from the organization. So this is the class for you. And in fact, Microsoft has a security course as well for M365. And this year they added 4 more security courses delving on different aspects. The goal is that they want to provide an end-to-end solution in terms of security. And we can also guide you. If you have any questions on that, just reach out to us. And just recently, Microsoft added this new course because there's also Azure network engineers in the organization. So this person is responsible in planning, implementing, and maintaining Azure networking solutions, including hybrid networks, connectivity, routing, security, private access to Azure services. So if this is your role, then I would recommend you looking into this class. And there's also a certification tied up to this. Now, as far as Azure Stack Hub Operator is concerned, so Azure Stack Hub is a way to provide organizations to run application in an on-prem environment and deliver Azure services in your data center. So if you're the person responsible for that, you plan, deploy, package, update, maintain the Azure Stack Hub infrastructure in your organization, then this is definitely for you. And I think I have one more for if you have SAP and you are responsible for this. Sometimes this is being done by admins, and this is a specialty certification. You may want to consider this. You're architecting or engineering for Azure for SAP workloads, and you're responsible for this, then definitely this is something to consider. There's also other classes. So if you are an AWS professional already and you want to also expand your knowledge, there are courses for AWS admins, developer, and architect, wherein you take less number of days of training and take the exam that I mentioned earlier. So we can also explain that to you if that is something that you'd be interested for your team. Now, to cap this off, we're offering 20%. Microsoft really wants to ensure that the IT professionals, the Microsoft IT professionals are certified. So we're offering this 20% discount on the exam voucher. So you can just, email webinar@netcomlearning.com, or if you have a learning consultant with Netcom, definitely get in touch with us. And this will certainly help your team or yourself in your career journey. And lastly, I just want to point out for the software assurance training voucher, because I also saw that we have people coming from our customers. You can utilize the SATV to enroll yourself at no cost in the courses, as well as to purchase vouchers. So for now, you can use it for the exam vouchers. Unfortunately, Azure is no longer available in the SATV catalog, but you can still use it for non-Azure courses. Okay, another one is, I'd like to draw your attention as well to the Netcom Unlimited. If you have a team that needs diverse training, and not only that, but Microsoft as well, we have a subscription offer that you can maximize your budget. So take a look at this, and let's discuss it, and we can show you how it will benefit your team. And there's also our learning passport, wherein you can go to our website, and there are different budget slabs that you can look into. All of these is all about saving that training budget and expanding it to help you maximize your technology investment. With that, thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you have submitted your questions, and perhaps we can have Vishal answer them. Thanks, Leela.
Thank you so much, Mary. And perhaps you answered this and I just missed it. Are there any certificates for today for participation or for attending the webinar?
Yes, certainly. So if you have completed 80% of your attendance on this webinar, just go to Netcom 365, put in your add in your email address, and you can actually check completed classes, and you'll see this certificate, and you can download it and post it on LinkedIn, or share it with your colleagues.
Wonderful. Thank you. And if for some reason they weren't able to live watch the entire thing, can they go back and listen to the replay and
Yes,
then do the certificate?
Yes, they can definitely do that. You can
Wonderful.
just go
Thank
back. I
you.
think it'll be available, 48 hours, Leela? Or check on Monday.
Yeah, usually whenever we do a Saturday webinar, we aren't able to get it out until Monday. So just if you don't see it sometimes Monday, then you can always give us a message.
Right. Thanks, Leela.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, we will go ahead and jump into our questions. Once the questions are completed, if you want to ask anything, once the questions are completed, we will just go ahead and wrap up because we know we all have busy Saturdays. So our first question is, and we'll just do this kind of in order, and this was very early on in the webinar. They were asking, what does cross mean here? And I don't know if this makes sense since we're so far past that. Vishal, you're muted.
What is the cross thing we're meaning here?
Yeah, it was very early on.
Reference cross access, cross roles. I'm not sure.
Okay, if you want to pop that back in, with clarification on what type of cross you were talking about, then we can get back to that. Can you recommend any good practice testing questions for AZ 104?
There's so many books. I mean, I wouldn't say there's something good or better, but there's so many options that you can get. You can go with official Microsoft test also. So whatever works for you.
Thank you. Our next question is, can you explain how do we configure ExpressVPN service?
The ExpressVPN again, when we go to Azure, obviously it's a part of the course when we do this, but you can actually go from the console and you can define those express route on top of which you can have the ExpressVPN. That's the high level overview of how that will be done.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Our next question. Can you explain the importance of the role and how many types of roles are available in Windows Azure?
So if you remember, there was a slide we spoke about the web role. That's for deploying websites. You can have worker roles for execution of the process, and we can have a VM role that can help you to schedule your Windows service. So they're like 3 roles: web, worker, VM.
Let's see, and I'm seeing one more question. So if no other questions come in after this, then we'll go ahead and wrap up. What is Azure DNS?
So it's a Azure managed DNS service that we can use to manage our domains by using the Azure's globally distributed infrastructure. That's what it is.
Thank you so much. Well, with that, it looks like we have gotten through all our questions. We are going to go ahead and launch a quick poll and find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to today's wonderful webinar, thank you so much, Vishal, for presenting. We have a lot of informative webinars coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to check all of those out and to register for any of them. Thank you all for joining us here today. If you do come up with any additional questions, you can feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time, and we will get back to you. We hope you all found today's webinar to be very informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us next time. And please feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Sharing is caring. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you, Mary. And
Guys, bye-bye.
have a wonderful day.
Yep, you all. Bye.